be able to host tonight's first virtual Catalyst with Dr. Greg Anderson. We're going to be going over the best ways to support your immune system during this time and also to support your evolving business. Definitely things to think about so that you can kind of keep things rolling without skipping too much of a beat. Before we get started, I do want to just mention the MediHerb Masterclass that was in the weekly beat and also included in the send out today. That is a really special opportunity to be enrolled in a masterclass. It's a set of 3 courses and it's being offered complimentary to you right now. It is something that we have to send in directly to corporate to enroll you by Tuesday. So, you know, shoot us an email or register through the weekly beat. Let us know if that's something you'd like to be a part of. I think it's a great opportunity to take advantage of right now. So on that note, I'll give it about 60 seconds for any last attendees to get on. I'm so excited to see.
So have you,
yeah.
Harmony, maybe if you figured it out, if you can figure out how people can ask you questions.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's a chat going. I've got a chat right now. Thanks, Dave. He said, we see and hear you fine. Thanks.
Who said that?
David Combs.
Oh, hi, David.
He's so you're more than welcome. If you have any questions, you can chat me and I will let Dr. Anderson know as we go. Don't worry if we don't answer in the role, we'll try to answer all the questions after. And on that note, Dr. Anderson, it's a pleasure to hand it over to you.
What a great intro. That was amazing. That's probably one of the best intros I've ever had. I think you do much better in person than you do online.
Oh my goodness. Such
Well, thank you for putting this together. And hello, everyone. And I just finished my day, so I'm still at the office. And what I wanted to talk to you about today was immunity, of course, but how you could have been prepared before this coronavirus, what you can do during the coronavirus, and how to recover your business after the coronavirus. So I'm very fortunate because I've been in practice for over 40 years. I've had really no dip in my practice, and there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll share that with you. In fact, I was just telling Harmony in a text earlier today. Today was absolutely a killer day. We were mobbed. And so I'm loving this. I hope that, you know, saying this, if some of you have closed your offices out of necessity or out of fear or out of whatever reason, you know, I hope that what we're going to talk about tonight brings you some comfort, brings you some courage. I've remained open through this whole thing and intend to continue to stay open. But we're going to go over some things about immunity tonight that you probably are familiar with, and then I'm going to share with you what I've been doing as my pre-infection protocol and what my plan is should I end up with it or have a patient end up with it. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you can be doing right now to re-energize your practice before you either open up again or before you're ready to get back up to 100 miles an hour. So let's go ahead and get started here. I wanted to start with some humor, only because that's who I am. And, you know, I just want to say as kind of I don't know, I want to soften this humor a little bit by saying there's a lot of people that have died from this coronavirus, and I don't find that funny at all. It's very tragic. And from a nutritional point of view, from a diet point of view, I think it's sad too, because a lot of those people might have done better had they not been living the lifestyle they were living. But I have found humor in people's reaction to things that we're all putting up with today, like shortages of toilet paper. We can't find hand sanitizer for our office. I've been making my own, by the way, for my office. You know, people blaming Corona beer for the pandemic, and even making fun of social distancing. So I put a couple of things that I thought were funny recently. This was on the bottom left-hand corner on that slide. You can see it says, "Single man with toilet rolls would like to meet a single woman with hand sanitizer for good, clean fun." So I'm hoping that was taken off of Tinder or something like that. I like the cartoon above. It's a little bomb shelter. It's all full of toilet paper, and the kids or the parents are asking, "Did anybody remember to bring food?" And then, of course, the classic one that started all the memes is a Corona beer in the refrigerator off by itself, and all the rest of the food has a mask on. And then this one showed up last week. This ATM machine thing, where they put the X's on the floor so people would be 6 feet apart. But you notice that a couple of these X's are about 9 or 10 inches apart, and a couple are maybe 2 feet apart. And so the caption says, "Thank God the virus can't move sideways, can only move forward and backwards." So, you know, there is humor in this. We have to laugh at some of the reactions of human beings. But let me talk a little bit about some of the new understandings of COVID. So what we do know, and let me get my screen out of the way here. We do know that it's transmitted by viral droplets. They can enter through the eye, they can enter through the nose, or they can enter through the mouth. That's normal for any respiratory virus. From there, it travels to the back of your throat, where it sets up housekeeping. The coronavirus, as you can see, a drawing here on the bottom right, the coronavirus has lots of little proteins sticking out from it, which can attach to receptors on the epithelial tissue in the back of your throat. And when it does that, it can inject the virus into the epithelial cells and start replicating. It's only after that's happened that the virus begins to spread down the airway passages to the lungs. And so I want you to put on your thinking caps for a minute. What would be one of the best ways to prevent this from spreading to the lungs in the first place? Well, you see the picture here. This is a coronavirus swab. This is how far in they stick the swab, almost to your ear. And when they stick it in, it goes all the way back through the nasal passages into the back of the pharynx. And that's where they're taking the sample from. So it makes sense that we gargle. I know that sounds really silly, but here's what I've been using to gargle with. At the office, I use the herbal extract. It's got echinacea in it, number one, which has got antiviral properties, but it's also an immune system, an immune system upregulator. It's got myrrh in it, which has some antiviral properties. It's got marshmallow, which will actually coat the cells of the epithelial tissue, protecting them from protein attachments. So I've also made my own gargle that I do in the morning and at night at home, just to make sure that I don't have viral colonies setting up housekeeping in the back of my throat, which could end up being a respiratory issue later on. So what we've learned about flu shots. So let me move these pictures out. We have Susan on video. So Susan, don't do anything nasty because I can see everything you're doing. Oh, she smiles. Okay, good. All right. So skipped a slide. So there was a study done in 2012. It happened to be done in Hong Kong. And it was done with kids from 6 to 15 years old. And they were split into two groups. One group was given a flu vaccine for the year 2008, 2009. And the other group got no vaccines. And they followed them over several years. And what they did, and this is what, I'll just read what it says. We identified a statistically significant increase of influenza respiratory virus infection among the people that got the flu vaccine, including increases in the risk of rhinovirus, Coxsackie, and echovirus infections. In other words, those who had flu shots had less immunocompetency when exposed to non-flu viruses, particularly respiratory viruses. The British Medical Journal just cited this study this week, and one of the top pediatricians in England has recommended that England do the same study to see if they should stop the use of flu shots. So interesting. Also, we learned in the beginning that people like the flu were dying from pneumonia, which is not true. There's very little pneumonia involved with this. If pneumonia gets involved, it's usually from another virus or a bacteria. But what they found out with COVID is that the COVID actually attacks the hemoglobin molecule. And when it attacks the hemoglobin molecule, the heme lets go of the iron that's part of that molecule. And now the hemoglobin can no longer carry oxygen. So our first line of defense when people got really ill and had to be hospitalized is we stuck them on a ventilator to push oxygen into their lungs, which was totally inappropriate because the lungs were carrying red blood cells that the hemoglobin had been inactivated on, and they couldn't carry oxygen. And so what they've recently found out is if we give somebody a blood transfusion, if we give them plasma with antibodies in it, or we put them on a lung or a heart-lung machine and turn up the oxygen levels and pump oxygen directly into the bloodstream, that brings people back from the dead. But ventilators never did and never will work with this situation because it's not pneumonia. It's the inability of hemoglobin to carry oxygen. So let's review for a second innate and adaptive immunity. You guys know this stuff, but I'm going to go over it anyway because that's the kind of guy I am. So innate immunity is that part of your immune system you don't ever have to think about. It's done for you automatically. And it includes all the things you see on the slide here: macrophages, natural killer cells, the complement system, dendritic cells that line your intestinal tract, neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils. Those are the warriors that are always on guard doing something for you. And the other side of that is your adaptive immunity. And adaptive immunity includes your B cells and your T cells. And your T cells, thank you, Harmony. And your T cells are those that make specialized T lymphocytes to attack viruses, and your B cells are those that actually are programmed to make antibodies. And so that kicks in later. The very first response is always your innate immunity. So it makes sense that if you want to keep from getting sick in any kind of a situation like this, you want your innate immunity to be very, very powerful. And of course, what herb do we know increases the innate immunity of a human being without upregulating adaptive immunity? Well, if you answered Echinacea, you were right. It's Echinacea. So your lymphoid tissues, your thymus, your spleen, your bone marrow is where your immune system is. I'm getting squelching, so somebody's not muted. So those tissues are where your immune system is. So in reality, we could add dendritic cells in there along your intestinal wall, all this stuff. Your immune system is everywhere, all right? But the main things that we want to support for being upregulated for an infection would be your thymus, your spleen, your bone marrow, which is the birthplace of all white blood cells, your thymus because it's where your T cells that fight viruses mature. Your spleen is where you store many of your immune cells along with your lymphoid tissues. So let's start looking at some nutritional support for the immune system. So what does your immune system need in terms of nutrition? It needs protein. Why? Well, protein's needed to build any cell. And so if you're going to build cells, you need protein. Antibodies are made from amino acids or proteins. And so you need protein to build antibodies. So protein's a no-brainer. Vitamin A. Vitamin A is needed for the normal function of natural killer cells, macrophages, and neutrophils. So it's needed to help you to have a healthy innate immunity. Do you think there's people that are vitamin A deficient? Of course there is. And it's also a mediator for B cells and T cells. Vitamin D. is needed by monocytes, macrophages, dendritic cells, and T cells. And each one of those cells I just mentioned has vitamin D receptors. It's been shown to stimulate immunity by increasing cell proliferation, so the increase in the number of these cells, and also the cytokine production, which means that more signals are sent out from cells to attract other cells to fight whatever is attacking you. Vitamin C has been shown to stimulate both the production of white blood cells, but it's also specific measures or functions stimulated by vitamin C include cellular motility, that would be the motility of the white blood cells through cell walls, through tissues, through the extracellular matrix, chemotaxis, which is the attraction to the actual wound or injury, and phagocytosis, which is the actual gobbling up of the virus infected cell. And neutrophils, which attack foreign bodies and bacteria and viruses, they seem to be the primary cell stimulated by vitamin C, but all the phagocytic cells are affected too. Vitamin B6. Whenever you have protein involved, whenever you have to produce amino acids, you have to have vitamin B6. That's the name of the game. Vitamin B12. Patients with diagnosed vitamin B12 deficiency have been reported to have suppressed natural killer activity and a decreased number of circulating lymphocytes. So what that means is if you're vitamin B12 deficient, then you're going to have an innate immune system that may not be as powerful as it could be. So your first line of defense against an infection is gone. So who's vitamin B12 deficient in our society? Well, a lot of people are vitamin B12 deficient. And one of the main reasons is they're taking antacids. And so when they take antacids, they can't absorb the vitamin B12 properly because they can't divide other things.
One is they're vegetarian, you fucking idiot.
Pardon?
So can we mute some of these people so I'm not being interrupted? But whoever said that, thank you for your brilliant answer, because that's the other part of this. If you are vegetarian or vegan, there's a strong possibility you're not getting enough B12. And B12 is absolutely necessary for the innate immune system so that you can fight it off before you have to fight it off with T cells and antibodies. Folic acid. So folic acid is mainly involved with the antibody responses of the beta cells. So that in a virus like this, it's probably not as important, but zinc is very important. Zinc deficiency impairs the complement system, which is one of those systems we have that we don't ever talk about or think about very much, but basically it builds itself into an attack machine and attacks a cell that's been infected and destroys it. Zinc is needed for the cytotoxicity of natural killer cells. So if a natural killer cell is going to do its job, it needs some poison. Zinc is what helps make that poison, probably by enzymatic actions. Zinc is needed for phagocytic activity of neutrophils and macrophages, and it's needed to generate oxidants that kill invading pathogens. Calcium. Calcium is needed for the early onset of immune signaling. So some of you that have heard me talk before about the calcium flash, this is part of the brilliance of Royal Lee. He knew this in the 1930s before we ever knew about the calcium flash. But what happens inside of a cell when there's a wound or there's a damage or there's an infection is there is a calcium flash within the cell, which takes a number of calcium ions for that to happen. And that in turn causes an enzyme system called the Duox enzyme system to become activated, and hydrogen peroxide is released into the extracellular space. That hydrogen peroxide is an attractant, particularly for T cells in a virus infection. So if you're low calcium, you can't signal. It's like the flashlight's not working. You can push it all you want, but you're not going to get any light from it. It's the same thing. No calcium, no flash, no response. Selenium supplementation improves cell-mediated immunity for deficient individuals. And selenium is at the core of what major vitamin? Well, since I can't hear you, I'll answer it myself. It's vitamin E. So vitamin E is necessary for a healthy immune system. Iron is necessary for killer chemicals. Iron's used to make the reactive oxygen species that kill pathogens. It's needed to differentiate and proliferate T lymphocytes. So if somebody's iron deficient, they can't make T lymphocytes readily, and that's going to make them more susceptible to a virus. And I didn't want to leave nutrition until I talked about mushrooms, because we have several products, both in the MediHerb line and in the standard process line, that have mushrooms in them. The one from standard process has, I believe it's turkey tail and maitake, but all mushrooms have shown immune enhancing properties. They're used in many countries to treat cancer, like reishi and shiitakes are used in the Asian nations to treat cancer, and they've been shown to enhance phagocytosis. So what they think it is in the mushroom is some specialized polysaccharides that are found in these mushrooms enhance our immune system. So let's talk about some herbs that support immunity. So we've talked about Echinacea before, but I think it's a good time to talk about it again. Besides, if Kerry Bone ever saw this and I didn't mention Echinacea, he probably never would text me or email me again. So anyway, as you know, the alkylamides in Echinacea increase phagocytosis, but they increase white blood cell count. They help prevent the development of respiratory system from air travel. That's from a research project. From another research study, that prevent the common cold, provides relief from the symptoms of upper respiratory tract infections. I put the things that had to do with flu and upper respiratory infections, but we also know that it increases natural killer cells, which is really important if you're trying to prevent cancer and possibly any kind of infection. Andrographis. Now, we've always been told Andrographis is what we use for the acute condition, and Astragalus is what we use for the more chronic condition. But when we get into the lungs and respiratory issues and that kind of thing, they can get turned around a little bit, particularly if it's viral. So I'll talk about this on another slide. But Andrographis is used in Chinese medicine to treat throat infections, acute or chronic coughs, flus with fever, skin disorders, even snake bites. Randomized double-blind studies show a significant decrease in the incidence of cold compared to a placebo. So it has an effect on cold viruses, which coronavirus is in that family. And the andrographolides, which are the essential products in the Andrographis, have been shown to inhibit viral maturation and increase phagocytosis. Astragalus enhances natural killer cells, their cytotoxicity, and their ability to eat up other cells. It's also been shown to have antiviral properties, most likely due to the increased production of interferon. So interferon is a molecule that, when made by your body, will actually go after viruses and break them down and kill them. So this is a really important herb. St. John's wort contains hypericin and pseudohypericin. These constituents have been shown to inactivate particularly enveloped viruses. And you should know coronavirus is an enveloped virus. Licorice root, most of us think about that in terms of digestion, even taste, or even working with the adrenal glands. But licorice root increases interferon production from T cells. It also inhibits viral growth in infected cells. Whoa, that's cool. And then thuya, and the active ingredient for that, or active constituent, is deoxypodophylotoxin or phyllotoxin, and it's a known antiviral. It's shown even to inhibit the herpes virus as well as flu viruses. And so if you look at this page, That's a product right there. So St. John's wort, licorice root, and thuya are the 3 herbs that are in Viranon. And so Viranon is going to be on our list of product. You can depend on that. So let's look at the nutritional products. Cataplex A. So why would we want Cataplex A? Well, you can see here, instead of telling you all the things that the lawyers told you in the manual, the old product guide, what I did is I went and gave you the Dr. Dobbins version of what's in each of these things so you can see what's in there. So when you look at vitamin A, it's got a lot of carotenoids in it, which is the vitamin, they're all part of the vitamin A complex. It's got nutritional yeast in it, so it's not just A. Nutritional yeast has got a lot of B vitamins in it. It's got soybean lecithin, which is a fat mover, wheat germ, carrot powder, desiccated kidney, which is got a high amount of vitamin A in it. So what vitamin A does is supports everything epithelial. So everything in your respiratory passages, everything in your digestive system, and everything in your skin. It's all epithelial. It's important for liver function and bile production, and vitamin A is needed for the function of white blood cells. Whoa, that's important. Cataplex C. So you can see veal bone PMG is one of the products here in Cataplex C. So that's not necessarily a source of vitamin C, but having veal bone in there allows for connective tissue growth and repair, which is where all your white blood cells come from, is connective tissue, meaning the bone and bone marrow. So there's desiccated adrenal buckwheat juice, which gives you some of the bioflavonoids, nutritional yeast, which gives you some more B vitamins, mushroom powder, which is a main source of vitamin C here, echinacea root, carrot powder, calcium lactate, ascorbic acid. So vitamin C supports the epithelial barrier function against pathogens. What did I tell you? I said the very first thing that happens is the virus enters through the respiratory passages or through the eyes, and it ends up setting up housekeeping in the back of the pharynx. And so if you have a strong epithelial barrier, then you may not have places for the coronavirus to attach. Vitamin C accumulates in phagocytic cells, such as neutrophils, where it can enhance chemotaxis. It helps generate reactive oxygen species for killing infected cells. And then it says the role of vitamin C in lymphocytes is less clear, but it's been shown to enhance differentiation and proliferation of both beta and T cells, likely due to gene regulating effects. So vitamin C is involved in turning on and turning off genes in the DNA and RNA. So Cataplex AC is a combination of both. And this was a product that Royal Lee came out with later. So you've got the vitamin C that helps the immune system, the vitamin A that helps the membranes. Vitamin C is helping membranes also. I probably wouldn't do Cataplex C or A by itself right now. I'd be doing AC if I could get it. So Cataplex D. So Cataplex D is not just D3 by itself. You see on this slide, vitamin D3 gives you 100% of the RDA, whatever that means. It's got some vitamin A esters in it that are needed for vitamin D metabolism. And it's got a food base, so it's got calcium lactate and milk powder, which is put there because Royal Lee felt it's going to be more absorbable if it's like a food. So vitamin D picks up the calcium and brings it from the gut to the bloodstream. What did I say about the calcium? You need the calcium in the white blood cells in order to create a calcium flash. But in order to have the calcium in the white blood cells, the calcium has to get into the blood system. And vitamin D is what carries calcium into the bloodstream. And then to get it from the bloodstream into the cells, you need vitamin F. So that's my only complaint about the products is I wish that Royal Lee had added the vitamin F to things like Congaplex, but I don't think he could have because vitamin F is an oil-based product and he was mixing it with water-based products. So that could be the reason. That's why we have a separate Cataplex F. Oops, we went the wrong way. Calcium lactate. So calcium lactate is, this is a no-brainer because I've already told you why we need calcium. But here's something I didn't know in studying this, that decreased tissue calcium can signal dormant viruses to become active. And so people who have recurrent virus situations like genital herpes or herpes simplex on the lips or something like that, if they have low calcium, then they can have a breakout from those dormant viruses. And that's why it's important when you have these kind of viruses and you haven't gotten rid of them with one of our protocols permanently, then you need to keep them at bay, and having adequate tissue calcium will do that. So at the first sign of acute illness or fever, Royal Lee used to say, take calcium lactate, take Thymex, take Cataplex F, one each every 30 minutes. So we'll come back to that in a second. Cataplex F. So Cataplex F, its main thing here is these two pieces you see, flaxseed oil extract and liver fat extract. So that is primarily where the fats are coming. So what Cataplex F does, it's a fat that moves to the cell membrane, and when it's absorbed into the cell membrane, it makes it easier for electrolytes, minerals, to move through the cell membrane into the cell. So that's what Cataplex F does for us. We have two forms. We have pearls, which contain no iodine, and tablets that contain iodine. But that's the primary reason for that. Cataplex F is to move the calcium from the bloodstream directly into the cell. So we've had some other things that help move into cells. You see there's orchic glandular extract. Whenever you see orchic glandular extract, Dr. Lee was trying to get something into a cell, and generally it was into bone cells. So because orchic glandular extract moves minerals into bone very nicely. It's in some of the bone products. And so he added to this so calcium can be moved into bones as well as into cells that have to do with the immune system. Zinc liver chelate. So it's primarily zinc. It's an imbalanced formula. It was meant to be used only short term. Here's where the difficulty comes in, because when I tell you my particular protocol for what I've been doing the last 3.5, 4 weeks, you're going to look at that and go, oh, zinc liver chelate. It's only supposed to be for short term. Well, I'm getting ready to switch to Keysin because I've been doing zinc liver chelate and other additional zinc all through this last 3.5, 4 weeks. Ostrophin PMG. So why would we use a bone PMG? Well, because that's the protomorphogen to grow and repair bone marrow. And bone marrow is the source of all your red and white blood cells. That's what's under attack here in this coronavirus. Thymex. So Thymex is a cytosol extract. So when we say a cytosol extract, that's the type of glandular where they've actually gone in and they've removed everything in the cytoplasm and they've made a product out of it. And so your thymus gland, its job is to mature and develop the undeveloped T cells that are being released from your bone marrow. And what the cytosol does is helps increase the number of mature T cells, and that helps you to fight the viral infection. So Thymex is an important product. Now Congaplex brings a bunch of our products we've already talked about together. So you see calcium lactate, so you've got your calcium. Cataplex AC is in Congaplex, so you've got your A and your C. Thymex is already in there. And you've got RNA, which is there to help build proteins so you can build white blood cells, manufacture antibodies. This is generally thought of being a short-term product only because it was not really ever made to help rebuild the immune system. It's only made to help fight off some acute symptoms. And, you know, Dr. Lee used to say, use 2 capsules per hour until you're feeling more comfortable when acute symptoms show up. But I always add Cataplex F when using this product. Why? Because I want that calcium that's in there to get into my cells. And that's why I add Cataplex F to this. So in this Congaplex study, this was a standard process study from several years ago, and I'll move my fat head out of the way here so you can see the graph. What they did is basically gave people Congaplex, and then they had a control group they gave nothing to. And the people that they gave Congaplex to, when they measured certain cytokines or chemical signalers from the immune system, the ones that took Congaplex had much higher available cytokines to do chemical signaling for the immune system. So basically, Congaplex helps you to keep up what I call a rapid response system by providing the things that you need in order to make the signaling molecules. Immunoplex, I'm going to say that Immunoplex is probably the premier immune system building product in the standard process line. This product is made to rebuild the immune system. Do we need it now? Well, unfortunately, we needed it in November, December, January. We needed to be taking this on a regular basis before we got here. I'm not sure how much help Immunoplex is right now, because our immune systems are working probably as hard as they can to keep us healthy, but we're not in the position to be rebuilding and developing new cells like we would be after an infection. So, but I would continue to take your Immunoplex if you're taking it, because it's the kitchen sink, and it's got your B12 in it, it's got your B6 in it, it's got other B vitamins, it's got selenium in it, it's got a balanced zinc, iron, copper, liver chelate in it, it's got thymus, so it's got Thymex in it, it's got spleen, thymus, PMG, bone, and liver PMG. So it's a great product. Epimune Complex. So it's made up of Epicor, which is a very special fermented nutritional yeast product. And it was discovered by accident. It was discovered in a nutritional yeast factory here in the United States. And people that were around the dust being provided when this stuff was being bottled or bagged or whatever they do to nutritional yeast, people that were breathing it in all day they never had sick days. And so they realized, oh, we have a product here, and they named it Epicor. And what they found in studies with it is it provides a healthy mucosal barrier. So that barrier is what keeps the virus from attaching to an epithelial cell and then injecting itself in there. If you've got a healthy mucosal barrier, it can delay that. It also increases the level of immunoglobulin A, which is the natural innate immunity you have on epithelial tissue to protect it. And it also activates natural killer cells. Turkey tail mushrooms are in there. It increases natural killer cells and CD8 T cells. Maitake mushrooms that enhance T cell activation. Some more calcium lactate, some more vitamin C, and some more zinc. This is a vegetarian formula. So this is something that vegetarians can use. It has no animal products in it. I was just reading today, this just has nothing to do, but I was just reading about that stupid burger that Burger King came up with, and they said it had no beef in it. It was good for vegans and vegetarians. I just read an article today that it has eggs in it. It's like, you know, I hate it when a large corporation like that has the audacity to lie to the American public. Anyway, Emphaplex. Why am I talking about Emphaplex? Well, Emphaplex is support for your lung tissue. So should this set up housekeeping in the back of your throat, should it travel down your bronchial tubes into your lungs, you want healthy lung tissue. This is what Royal Lee built to make healthy lung tissue. I'm not going to go through everything in here, but this is a great product. And if you've got patients who have lung disorders, like they have emphysema, or they have, what do they call it? I'm having a brain fart. I haven't had dinner yet. Sorry, folks. But But if they've got, a lung condition, really bad asthma, frequent pneumonias, all that kind of stuff, Emphaplex is going to be of a help to them to fight this off. So this would be in their preventive protocol. Let's talk about herbal immune products. So Echinacea, we've talked about that already. Our Echinacea is unique in the world because it is standardized to the alkylamides that are in there. And the alkylamides, we know, will cause the tongue to tingle when they're present. I found an old bottle of Echinacea at home because I'm totally out of it. I have it on order, but I sold out of it. Didn't have any more at home. I found an old one that expired in 2017 in a drawer, and I opened it and sucked on it. I had the biggest tingle in my tongue, and I said, well, this stuff is still good. I mean, the alkylamides are still there. But it supports your innate immunity without increasing the adaptive response. This is an important thing because people ask this question all the time. If I have a patient with an autoimmune disease, can I give them Echinacea? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely, because it supports innate immunity without increasing the adaptive response. Because when we've got autoimmunity, we don't want more antibodies being produced to go after the body, but it protects you immunologically without having to increase that. Echinacea is always better taken on a regular basis rather than waiting for an acute immune challenge. So this is something you should have been taking in November, December, and January to be the most effective today. Andrographis, the complex contains not only Echinacea, but it contains holy basil, not only Andrographis, but it contains Echinacea, holy basil, and holy basil essential oil. And Andrographis seems to inhibit viral replication in one of the studies that was done on Andrographis. And that's important because if the virus is allowed to set up housekeeping in somebody's system, we want to begin to inhibit the viral replication. So when I would take Andrographis, I mean, you could take it from the very beginning as a preventative thing, but if you know that they've starting down that road, Andrographis is something you definitely want to have to inhibit viral replication. Astragalus, and this is the slide I told you what I was going to bring up. In studying, there was a Chinese study that was basically just recently translated into English, and it's their response to the COVID virus back in December and January. And they were looking at traditional Chinese doctors in China and what they were using to successfully treat coronavirus. And there were two things: licorice and astragalus. And astragalus increases the production of interferon, which can kill viruses before they actually begin to destroy your tissues. Astragalus increases the production of T cells and helps to fight upper respiratory infections. So the thing I put in my preparation kit, my preventative kit, was astragalus first of all and foremost, and then Andrographis should I end up getting the virus along the way. And by the way, we're all going to get this virus, or we've already had it, or our immune system is so ironclad that we're never going to get this virus or anything related to it. St. John's wort. So St. John's wort, as we talked about already, is an antiviral for enveloped viruses, and it interferes with virus replication. So taking St. John's wort by itself or taking it in Viranon would be definitely something you'd want to add if you felt like the infection had taken hold. Licorice high grade. So it increases interferon once again, inhibits virus uptake by cells, increases production of T cells, protective to the lung cells, and the dosage for that is a teaspoon a day in water or juice. Somebody's not muted here, so I can hear you playing the slot machines. So Viranon, we talked about that already. It's Thuya, St. John's wort, and licorice. So you can get St. John's wort and licorice all together in this one product. So you've got 3 antiviral herbs, and that one in Thuya, the deoxypodophyllotoxin, is one of the strongest known antivirals on the planet. So this is definitely a product. It could be used preventatively, but particularly if somebody has started to go down the road of having an infection. And then herbal spray, Phytosynergist. It's marshmallow, sage, calendula, echinacea, myrrh, and clove bud. It supports a normal mucus layer in the back of the throat. It introduces antimicrobials directly to the throat area. And so what I do is I just take this thing and I spray it. I don't read the directions on these things. I just spray it like 10 or 12 times in the back of my throat, tilt my head back, and just let it sit in the back of my throat for 10 seconds. And then I swallow it. At home, I'm using a custom gargle. I have liquid herbal dispensary at home. And so what I've done is I've mixed Echinacea Premium liquid and licorice root extract together. And I just take about a teaspoon of that. I just swig it out of the bottle. I just take about a teaspoon of that and I gargle with it for a few minutes, let it sit in the back of my throat, feel the tingling on my tongue, sometimes in the back of my throat, then I swallow it. But remember, that's the first place the virus is going to set up housekeeping, is the back of your throat. Bronch effect. So if it does go down the bronchial tubes, it does start to go down the lungs. This is a great product. I sell most of this to mothers with small children that have kindergarten group. You know, they're just starting school. They're in nursery school, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and they're coming home and they're coughing all the time. Licorice root, pleurisy, echinacea, white horehound, thyme essential oil, and ginger extract. And what it will do is it supports respiratory health. It supports a normal cough reflex, and it supports normal mucus flow to get the junk out of there, and healthy mucosal tissue. So it's protective, and it's going to keep that cough down so you're not spreading it to other people at the same time. So Dr. Lee's original early immune protocol, he called the immune triad. And that was calcium lactate, Cataplex C, and Cataplex F. Now, really today, you know, you can do that with Congaplex and Cataplex F together. Instead of taking 3 products, you can take 2. Today, as we look back at his recommendations back in the 1930s, we now know that calcium is necessary for the calcium flash or calcium cloud that signals the immune system. It wasn't until 1940 that we learned that vitamin C increased phagocytosis. So he was way before his time. And of course, Cataplex F is no longer called vitamin F like it used to be. The F factor, which is similar to linoleic or linolenic acid, helps the cell membranes become more permeable, allowing calcium and other minerals to enter the cell. So that was Royal Lee's very first immune program. But this is what I'm doing. So I've had people asking me this for the last almost a month and a half now. What are you doing, doctor? This is what I do. So I'm already taking Echinacea and Emphaplex every day anyway. I've been doing that for years. But I've added to that gargle. I'm gargling at least 3 times a day with either the herbal throat spray or my little mixture. I'm taking 4 Astragalus a day. I'm taking 9 Congaplex a day. I'm taking 2 Cataplex D, 2 Cataplex F, and once in a while, I'll take some Cataplex C or Cataplex AC, depending on whether I'm at one of my offices or whether I'm at home. So this is what I've been taking all along the last 6 weeks. And I don't have it. And I have but one patient who's been inactive for probably 4 or 5 months, who ended up in the hospital on a ventilator. And we talked about that already. The reason ventilators don't work is because they're providing oxygen to somebody's red blood cells that can't carry oxygen any longer. But she was healthy enough that she survived it. She went home. But before she went home, her oldest son called me, and he's been a nutritional patient for a couple of years. He wanted to know, because his dad was 15 years older than his mom, and he has another brother that's younger than him at home. What can we do when mom gets home from the hospital to keep us all from getting this? And I just basically told them what I'm doing, and they came down that afternoon and bought everything that they could. And I can tell you now, that's been about 3 weeks ago now, and nobody in that household has gotten corona. So I know that it works on a very local basis with a person who's carrying the virus, even in the same house. It's helped people to prevent it in the first place. Now, what if somebody gets it? Well, here's what I would do. I'd stay the course. I'd do what we were doing already. But what I would add at this point in time is I would switch to Andrographis from Astragalus, only because it has more power after there's an infection than it does prior to, because we're dealing with viral replication. And I would add Viranon. So I would do at least 4 Viranon a day. And if they start to get the coughing, it's going down into the bronchial tubes and lungs, they need to go on the bronchofected Emphaplex right away. So that would be my active coronavirus support protocol. So we're done with the actual products, but I wanted to spend a few minutes with you on how to turn this particular strange moment in time into some future practice momentum. Some of you have probably seen drops in your practice. Some of you may not be seeing as many new patients as you've seen before. Normally I see about 5 or 6 new patients a week. Right now, this last couple of weeks, we've probably seen 2 new patients each week. But because I've been in practice so long, my books are full, and it's hard for me to get everyone in and not get my waiting room all jammed up with people constantly. But that came from something, and I'm going to share that in a minute. So the first thing I would think about is always be marketing. So I want you to look at what markets around you and what restaurants are doing to stay in business right now. They're doing home delivery. They're doing curbside service. They have special hours for seniors and people who have compromised immunity. So what could you change in your current services to make up for those income losses? Well, you could think about having special hours for seniors or those at high risk. You could do curbside service or home delivery of supplements that your patients need. But I want to enforce something right now that you might not have thought about, and that is the time to be marketing is all the time. You don't wait for your practice to fall in the toilet before you begin marketing. So if you look at these little graphs on the side, where these little black arrows are, that's when most businesses try to do marketing. Whenever their business hits a new low and then it goes up, then it drops down and they're marketing again. If you're always marketing, you're always growing. And so I want to make that really, really important. So think about having some videos about your practice or popular health topics, and do one every week and get it out to your patients. Either put it up on YouTube and send a link to it, put it on your Facebook page, put it on your website. Use Harmony's, I don't know, all of you should be familiar with Harmony's You've Got Marketing social media bundle that she sends out every month. Use it, start using it. I mean, it's real pretty, and I'm sure you've enjoyed looking at it, but now's the time to start using the thing. Plan some events for later this year. I mean, one of the events you should be planning is, we always talked about, because I have 5 kids, when they go away to college, we call it the freshman 15. Whenever a kid moves away from home and they're in college and they can eat whatever the hell they want to eat, they end up gaining a lot of weight. And so in this situation, we have the COVID 15. Probably it's going to end up being more like the COVID 20 by the time this thing's over. But have you thought about starting a purification program for your clients who've gained weight during this crisis? Whether you start it next week, whether you start it the week after, now's the time to start planning to do that. This is a great time. Everybody's looking at, how can I lose this frickin' weight that I gained while I'm sitting home babysitting my refrigerator? So the other thing, and this is where I'm fortunate because I've been very diligent about patient education. Here's what I've learned over the last 3 weeks from other practitioners. If the practitioner has been educating their patients about the immune system, and that can be chiropractic in the immune system, it can be acupuncture in the immune system, it can be nutrition and herbs in the immune system, they've had very little dip in their practice numbers because the patients already know the most important preventive measures they can take is to have either a nervous system check for interference, to remove blockages. I don't even know how to word it in acupuncture, but remove interference to the system for energy to circulate through the system, or even nutrition to have the food that you need to have in order to feed your immune system. So I want to share a couple of stories with you. I had a patient come in the other day. I hadn't seen him in almost a year. And always when somebody comes back in, I haven't seen him for a while, it's like, so tell me, Paul, why are you here today? And I expected him to tell me, well, I've got this pain here, I've got this ache here, or, you know, my wife told me to come in or whatever. Here's what his answer was. I need to have my nervous system checked for interference while this COVID-19 stuff is going on. Do you think my patient education had something to do with that? You bet it did. Because he told me after I talked to him about it that he watched a video that I sent out 2 weeks ago about making sure that you don't miss your appointments, that you get in and make sure that you're doing what you can to raise your level of immunity in your body. Another patient came in, her name was Ricky, and I asked her, you know, a lot of people, because I know people from where she works, a lot of people from where you work miss their appointments for the first couple of weeks that started, and you've been really good at, you know, making it into the office and not missing any appointments. I said, what made the difference for you? And she said, I saw the posters in your office on how the immune system benefits from chiropractic, or in your office it could be acupuncture, or it could be nutrition and herbal medicine. I never knew how expansive it was. I always thought the chiropractic was about neck and back pain. So she hasn't missed a visit because she wants to make sure her immune system is protected. So we always talk about think outside the box. I want you to think outside your office for a minute. So this is a great time to develop a recall system. So how about taking all of your nutrition patients that you haven't seen for at least a year, and you can go back 2 years, 3 years, however you want to, assemble all your inactive files and then group them. So the way I group them is this way. They go in a pile marked A if they're good patients I'd like to see again. If they're lousy patients and I never want to see them again in my life, they're B patients. If I don't have any feelings whatsoever about them, they go in the C pile. So what I do next is I just get rid of the B files. I don't want to ever see those patients again. And then I make a master list of mostly the A files. I'll go through the C files and I'll pick out a few, maybe a half a dozen of them, and we'll put them on a spreadsheet with addresses. We already have that already. We keep it up constantly in our office. And then what you can do is you can design a promotion package of services. So chiropractic adjustments, scans, nutritional surveys, whatever. If they want to come back in their office, that can even be the first adjustment or the first needling or a system survey or something like that, free of charge when they come in the office the first time. And print letters and send them out. Stagger the mailings because you don't want everyone scheduling all at one time. So mail some every 3 or 4 days. And then follow up with the ones you want to follow up on your A list with a phone call and ask if they got your offer and what they'd like to do about it. You're going to get people back in the office. So one of the things that I would do in a promotion package would be something like this when I'm recalling patients. And it would sound like this. We're in a very difficult time right now. And this is unprecedented in most of our lifetimes. You're probably concerned about immunity, and you've been, you remember from my office talking about how the immune system needs to be fed. It needs to have a good nerve supply. It needs to have energy. This is the time when you should be leaning on chiropractic services or acupuncture services or nutrition or whatever during this time. And I'm sending you this promotion package to get you back in the office so we can get your immune system running at a higher level so that you are impervious to this virus. And you're going to have people sign up for this. I do recall usually once a year, and I don't do a lot of it because I don't have a lot of inactive patients that I want back. But my good ones, I do this a couple of times a year. The other thing you can do is develop a referral packet. And we did this just last week. So one of our new patients that called and scheduled today was actually from a referral packet. So what we do, what I tell people to do if you're going to create a system like this is create a welcome to your practice letter, develop a certificate like a passport to wellness, whatever you want to call it, with an offer with special services. Write a flyer that says what happens on your first visit, and then put all these things in a folder with a business card. And then when one of your patients comes in, right now it's real easy to go, so everyone's healthy in your family? Oh, yeah, everyone's healthy. So which of the people in your family would you like to protect from this coronavirus? Well, I'd like to protect all of them. Well, or who do you know from work that you'd like to protect from this coronavirus? Or who do you know, your relatives or your friends you'd like to protect? And they're going to tell you somebody, and get their name. And what you do is you just hand them a packet and say, I want you to give this to Mary next time you see her, and invite her to come into the office to have her spine checked. And now the letter that we sent out, the welcome to our practice letter that we sent out 2 weeks ago, we actually redid the letter so it's actually coronavirus. It's about the immune system and coronavirus and the importance that chiropractic and nutrition pay in ensuring a healthy immune system. So it works because I know we just scheduled one today. Keep your nutrition patients in the loop. So call your patients up if you're not seeing them right now. How are you doing? Do you have any questions or comments for me right now about your protocols? Sorry, I got the hiccups. How are you doing with your supplements? Are you following your protocol? Do you need to order more supplements right now? Because patients they're not going to ask you, some of them will, but most of them are just going to go, oh yeah, I ran out of those a month ago. I'm sure glad to be back in the office or whatever. So you can make this call and do this. You can drop ship or you can have them enroll. We can enroll in Patient Direct. If you've got an inactive client or an active client, just tell them, we haven't done a system survey for a while. Let me send you a link and you can complete a new one, and we'll have a consultation over the phone about your results before I see you next time. And then constantly be sending out emails or videos for your clients, or point them to your website or Facebook or wherever there's something that would be educational for them. I want to make this known for those of you that have done Euland's system. Corey Stern was out here last year teaching, and she's tomorrow, Friday, at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. She's doing a live Facebook on reconnecting with patients during and after this pandemic. So I would really recommend that you get on this call and see what kind of ideas Corey has. I mean, she's practicing in the middle of ground zero. She's in New York. And so she's seeing people and she's seeing the fear and everything else. So, this would be something that I think would be appropriate. If you can't do it, have somebody else do it. It's on Facebook Live tomorrow, and have them record it for you. Here's another think outside the office. I'm going to move my picture here for a minute. Some of you know that Rhonda Nelson is now teaching people how to run a virtual practice, which is what she's been doing since she left Seattle. Is she's doing all telephone nutrition. And so she has a system already worked out. She's got forms, documents, guidelines, marketing strategies, all the legal considerations. And I put here the actual link to get to the site. Her virtual practice builder course is $179, but I think at this point in time it would be well worth it. to learn how to do this, because this may be the wave of the future. Everyone's talking about what's going to be the new norm. Well, the new norm may be having more visits virtually rather than office-wise. And I think we're to the end of what I was going to talk about tonight, but let me go back to that last slide because I didn't want to cover it up. You remember sitting in math class in high school and doing algebra, and you're going, when are we ever going to use this crap? And of course, all of us have been looking at these curves, these exponential function curves, and they've been talking about, you know, the virus is going to grow here, and then it's going to peak, and then it's going to drop down rapidly, or let's flatten the curve. And, you know, one of the things that wasn't logical to me when we talked about sheltering at home is one of the ways that you flatten a curve, one of the ways that you stop a viral epidemic is you let it run through the community. The second is you wait for it to mutate. And if we shelter at home, it doesn't get to the community. And so what happens is the entire epidemic lasts longer. But I thought this was wonderful at the bottom where it says, like we'll ever use this crap. It's like now we're all looking at these graphs on a daily basis. So I want to thank you for being here with us tonight. And if you have questions, I'll remain on the line if somebody would like to ask a question. I guess Harmony will moderate that.
Yes, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat box. We have a message from Marcella Gracer saying, thank you, Dr. Anderson, great stuff. That really was a great presentation. And I think the last part there too, like reaching out to your patients and asking them if they have, you know, any questions or concerns for you during this time. A lot of them, you know, like you said, may not reach out to you, but probably do have kind of questions and concerns in the back of their mind. And that's a great conversation starter between the two of you.
You know, there's one thing you just said there, Harmony, that I want to say something about is one of the things when I call these patients I haven't seen for a while, the nutritional patients, and I'm asking them those questions, the most common question I get asked is, Dr. Anderson, what are you doing to keep from getting this? They all want to hear it from you. Why don't get on the phone and talk to them about it? So,
no, it's awesome.
And tell Marcella, whoever she is, that her check is in the mail.
We got a few other checks to write then because there's a few other fans. But we do have a question. What about pneumotrophin, PMG, or Resco?
Pneumotrophin definitely after an infection. You could do it as a preventative to help build new healthy lung tissue, bronchial tissue. I wouldn't be opposed to that. For myself, I was just trying to keep my number of products down. Yeah. So I didn't add. There's lots of things I could have added. I could have added additional Cataplex AC. I could have added Thymex Extra. I could have added more vitamin D. There's other immune products I could have added, but I didn't. I was trying to keep it simple.
Okay.
But yes, pneumotrophin definitely.
And the Resco?
I don't have any experience with Resco. I've always used Emphaplex.
Okay.
I'd rather feed than push. And so Resco is herbal and it does have some support to it, but Emphaplex is a total support product. It's food for the lungs.
Okay. I have someone saying that Emphaplex may not be available right now. I'll have to look into that and see if
there's a lot of the stuff we talked about tonight that may or may not be available.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw that stuff was available yesterday, and I had another chiropractor who comes in and I adjust him every Thursday, and he came in and he said, I tried to order those things, they're already gone. I said, well, wait another couple of days, they'll be back.
Yeah. Wait a couple days. You know, they're doing a really great job of getting things back in stock.
Yeah.
So long as you can
Epimune Complex came back today.
Okay, awesome to know.
So it's out there.
All right. Anyone else with any other questions on anything that was covered tonight? Anyone having issues? Dr. Martinez, anyone having issues with back-ordered products? I don't know if you mean by getting them, but we can definitely talk with you on that. Lot of just, this was great. You rock, Greg, what you do. This was wonderful.
Who said you rock, Greg?
Dr. Bueller, straight from the source.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to get my checkbook out tonight, I guess.
Well, as always, you guys can always email us directly. Oh yeah, David Combs wrote, "Thank you, Greg. Great stuff with $signs." So there's another check to be written.
Yeah, your check. I already mailed your check, David.
Oh, but you can always. Oh, we do have another question. Okay, I've been recommended to educate calcium lactate as an option to decrease an acute fever. However, we need a fever as part of the disease-fighting immunity process. What are your thoughts, please? Thank you.
That's a really good question. In reading Royal Lee, he didn't give calcium lactate to necessarily bring down the fever. He used calcium lactate in any infection that had a fever, because he found that that's where it did the most good. And they were dealing with a lot of stuff in those days that we knew nothing about, like brucellosis and things like that. So, you know, calcium lactate was the first thing, but the fever showed up when there was an immune reaction. And so that already told you needed the calcium already, because your immune system was failing. It wasn't stopping the infection. But as far as lowering a fever, I've never really read anything about calcium lactate lowering fevers. And as a chiropractor, philosophically, I wouldn't lower a fever. Fever is a normal process, and I tell my patients with their little children, don't worry about a fever. Even if it gets to 105, I'm not going to panic. 106, you might have a seizure, but that's only because they're not getting enough calcium in their system, and they'll get a febrile seizure, not Julius Caesar. I get the two confused all the time. Yeah, I don't think I would never try to bring down a fever unless it was like at 106. I'd put them in an ice bath. But no, I don't. Calcium lactate is, in my mind, is not to be used for reducing fevers. Okay. If you want to reduce a fever, take an aspirin. But, you know, I'm talking to the wrong crowd if I say that.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, and meeting. No, I'm just kidding. Well, as always, you're all more than welcome to reach out to your rep or anyone on the team directly with any additional questions. We're happy to help get you the right answers. And as far as any products that you're worried about being back ordered or ordering issues, just keep in mind, so long as you can select a quantity from that drop down box on a product, you can order it and it will get to you. So just know that, have that reassurance. And I think we're good.
Thank you, Harmony.
Thank you so much. It was so great to virtually see you after so long.
Yes. And you're as virtually as beautiful as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Everyone, take care, stay safe, and stay happy.
Bye.